Hello and welcome to Motors for the Masses, and what is a comparison video between the Honda GB350S, the BSA 350 Bantam and the Royal Enfield 350 Honda. So first what we're going to do is just have a sit on all three of them, see how they feel, see how they look, and then we're going to take them for a quick ride and see how they feel in general. I've ridden them all before, but just as a back-to-back comparison. So see how they feel in general and whether they get up to 70 mile an hour and hold it there. So let's roll the intro and get cracking. So now you've seen the specs of all three, let's have a sit on them and see how they feel initially. So as I sit on the Honda, initially I've got the side panels digging on the inside of my legs. Now remember, I'm 5'10.5" with a 31.5" inside leg, but I can feel that digging in. When I put my feet up, obviously when I'm riding, you don't really notice that. So that's not really much of an issue. Again, everything just feels very secure and very solid and very well made. I've got decent mirrors. We'll see how they feel, see if there's any vibration when we're riding. A good view of the dash. This one does have the screen on it, but good stretch on the handlebars. Nice switch gears, basic, but you know, they do what they're supposed to do. You've got the horn, indicators, lights. There's a fog light up here. That's the additional fog lights that are down here on the engine bars, and obviously the start and the hazard flashes on this side. But yeah, it's a nice feeling bike. It is quite solid in the seat, but not uncomfortably so. It's just, I don't know how that would feel on a long journey, but it is quite solid. But when you bounce it, the whole bike sort of bounces rather than just the back end and then the front end. When you do that, it's, I mean, obviously it does, but when you bounce up and down, you see the whole bike moving. So there we go. That is the Honda. Now onto the BSA. I've been riding this for quite a while now. Initially, it feels a little bit lower. I don't have the panels digging in my side. I can feel them just lightly touching, but they're not digging in my side. Again, I've got a wider stretch on the handlebars here. A good visible dash right in front of me here. Again, the bounce is more so because this has right way up forks just like the Honda does, but more so on the back. When I'm bouncing like that, you're bouncing more so on the back than you are on the front, if you notice. So they feel a little bit more solid on the suspension. Comfortability wise, it's not bad. That Honda has the center stand, this one doesn't, only a side stand. The mirrors are a bit more generic, not quite as good quality by the looks of it, and rather than go up here, they go out slightly further. And again, we'll see what that's like when we're riding. But they don't feel as good a quality as the Honda ones, I'll be honest. But, you know, bearing in mind the price of the bike, in comparison to that, and we'll go on to that later. In fact, you saw it at the bottom there, so you can see it's £500 cheaper. I don't know why I hid that. You know that already. So yeah, there we go. So, what about the Royal Enfield? Now, this might get a little bit frustrating of me trying to flip between the bikes. I might have to do something drastic here. Now I'm going to try something. So just bear with me a second. Right there. What? Fantastic. Anyway, the Royal Enfield Hunter. Well, sitting on this, yeah, that seems to have worked. Okay, so now what about the BSA? Hang on, let me try one more time. Yeah, wait there. Yeah, that worked as well. Fantastic. Right, so that means then, sorry, am I all right to speak, or do you want to? Okay, all right. You all right with that? Okay, so what we're going to do now is just have a general look around each bike, okay? We'll start with the Honda, a general look around, and then we'll general look around this, and then a general look around that, and then we're going to take them for a little ride and see how it feels. So that worked really well, didn't it? Over to you. Okay, I'll start then. So, everything on the Honda always seems pretty well made, doesn't it? The exhaust pipe, it doesn't look that bad at all. Bearing in mind this is a 74 plate bike, I've got no burn on the corners, everything there's nothing that's scratched or damaged, anything like that. The quality is still pretty decent. I mean, you are getting a Honda, and they are up to scratch with the way they are building their bikes. What I find odd is that the engine bars on this side are slightly longer than the engine bars on that side, because I think it sticks out to accommodate the exhaust, whereas on this side it doesn't quite. So it looks like they stick out for, oh, I don't know, maybe not. That's just an illusion. Okay, forget that. But yeah, other than that, I quite like it. What is good as well is that on the Honda you've got the foot peg and you've got a little step there to put your heel on, so you don't burn your heel on the exhaust, because it's quite a high level exhaust. But I have noticed that the BSA does the same thing, so that's pretty good, to be honest. You don't get a belly pan on this, whereas that one seems to have the belly pan, and obviously the radiator at the front there, where you don't have a radiator on the Honda at all. So that is just, you know, it's, yeah. I mean, quality wise, as I say, you can't really fault the Honda with quality. And to be fair, I don't think the BSA is a lot worse, but let's see what he has to think. Okay, well, as far as I'm concerned, I've got an exhaust that unfortunately is starting to show signs of burn on the corner there, which is the same as the BSA 650. It seems to be a thing that you've got a bit of a burn away on the exhaust, and this is a 75 plate, so it's not that old. So the exhaust quality isn't amazing. I mean, it just looks like a mild steel exhaust with a stainless back end, but other than that, yeah, I mean, everything seems sturdy enough. I mean, obviously, if you want to see the individual reviews, then I will put them in the description below. But other than that, everything in comparison, I would say that looks slightly better made, the Honda, whereas this one looks a little bit, I don't want to say budget, because I don't think it is budget, because I think it is a nice bike and it is well built. It's just not quite as good a quality as the Honda. Probably about £500 worth of quality less than the Honda, funny enough. So what about you? It definitely feels a little bit smaller, as you can see here with a slight bend in my knee. It does feel a little bit smaller than those two, but quality wise it's still pretty good. The switch gears are again different on this than they are on the other one and the other one, the BSA and the Honda. You've got the offset dash on here. This does have an extra, the screen on here, but the mirrors again quite similar to the BSA style, so they're just a generic mirror. I say I don't want to call them cheap, they're just a generic mirror, nothing fancy at all. However, it does feel, suspension wise, again, quite firm, a bit more firm on this one than it is on the BSA, but about the same firmness as you get on the Honda. But it's all right. Quite firm on the front end, but again, right way up forks, not upside downs, so they've all got similar features. Side stand and centre stand on this one, like the Honda has, so That's a bit of a bonus. This one also has the extra rack fitted. You don't get that as standard. But there you go. So you've got the Royal Enfield and the BSA and the Honda. The exhaust is very similar, but it does feel as though it's better made, or the finish is better. There's no burning on the exhaust pieces there. The welds are pretty decent. Again, like the others, you do have a little bit of a rear footrest on here, so you don't burn your heel on the exhaust. I like the rubbers on here on both the rider and the passenger foot pegs. The frame and the welds seem really good on this one. I like the Royal Enfield. They are built to a very good quality. But there's not really much to choose between the three, is there? What is interesting is that Royal Enfield seem to have responded to the price of the BSA, and it is now 3,495. So where I did the first video on the BSA and I said it is 3,500, so the BSA was £100 cheaper, it's now the same price. In actual fact, this is now £4 cheaper than the BSA. Sorry, my bra strap. Rock on Tommy. Well, there you go. Right, let's see if I can do this. Right then, let's take them out for a ride.
Okay, I'll tell you what, it's a very easy gear change. I don't even know I'm changing gear. I can't even feel it click up. It just sort of goes into gear. That's a very light and easy gear change. I do apologise if there is rain on the camera. I've been trying to avoid it, but I can't, so I apologise in advance. It's very easy to sit at 30. Does the job very well. It's very comfortable. Feels very light, pretty nimble. It's got quite a retro sound to it, to be fair, that sort of poppy, farty noise. Alright, let's get down the dual carriageway. To 50. To 60 in fourth, nothing behind me, but I will pull in. Up to 70 in fourth, and then into fifth, which is a cruising gear. It certainly doesn't go any faster really. So speed wise it feels about the same as the Royal Enfield. On the Royal Enfield 350 Hunter, or Hunter known to most, and initially straight out of the gate it's nippy, just like the 350 Classic. It's got plenty of torque and it gets up to speed very nicely indeed actually. Very comfortable seating position. My knees are hugged nicely against the tank. The handlebars feel as though they're a little bit lower than I expected them to be. It's like I'm leaning forward a tiny bit. It's not a problem. It's like I'm leaning forward a tiny bit. If I sit back on the seat, I am leaning forward more than I would be on the Classic, which is a bit more upright. So the handlebars feel a little bit lower than the Classic.
Let's see if we can get up to 70. Here we go. Into fourth at 50. Up to 60. 64. Into fifth. Just like the Classic, gets up to 60, okay, and then it's a hard struggle up to 70. Could do with a sixth gear. There's a car sitting right alongside me. You can get an overtake, there you go. So, it's not designed to do speed.
Got a typical sort of farty sound that you expect from a Euro 5 Plus bike that's a 350. Very in keeping with most modern classic bikes. Mirrors are alright. If you position them in the right place, you get about 80 to 85% visibility. Okay, up to 65, into 6th, 70 quite happily, and it'll do more. However, when you are sitting at 70, I am getting a buzz through the foot pegs.
Okay, so time for a sum up. Now, I did go for a ride on each of those bikes that day. However, it was really fine, misty rain. And when I look back on the footage, you could hardly see. Everything went blurry on the lens because it just, like that really fine, misty rain where it just completely ruins the shot. So I thought the easiest thing is just to think about what I said and think about each bike as I rode it, and then I'll do a little summary. So I've made some notes and we'll go through them now. So I like to say that all three were equally as flickable. They're equally feel as light, even though there's a slight difference in weight, and I'll go on to that in a minute, but they all felt very easy to maneuver, very simple to ride. There was nothing difficult about them, and there was nothing that I didn't like about the ride on each bike, to be fair. The mirrors were best on the Honda because they're slightly thicker, and there's no distortion. The BSA, you did get a tiny bit of distortion, about 70 miles an hour, and the Royal Enfield did distort a little bit more between 65 and when it eventually got to 70. All three had decent initial acceleration, but the BSA was the best. The BSA has the best top speed as well. It gets up to 70 very easily, and it stays there without a struggle, whereas the Honda does get to 70, but it does slow down if you go uphill. And the Royal Enfield will hit 70 eventually, but it's a lot more comfortable between 60 and 65, and after 60 it is a bit of a slow slog. The BSA is the only one of the three that has 6 gears. The other two have 5. And the gear change is equally as good on all three. Very easy to get in and out of gear. Decent clutch, although the Honda does have an extra light clutch in comparison to the other two. Not the other two are heavy, but the Honda was a little bit lighter, almost finger light. The Royal Enfield for me sounds the best. Followed by the Honda and then the BSA, which unfortunately has been hit by that Euro 5 Plus bug, and it's got that sort of aftermarket style modern exhaust, whereas it's a bit more raucous and a bit more raw on the Honda and the Royal Enfield. Although the finish of the exhaust I think was best on the Royal Enfield. Followed by the Honda and then the BSA, which unfortunately seems to be getting a bit of what's the word I'm looking for, fading on the initial bend of that exhaust pipe. They were all equally as stable, but the BSA did have vibey foot pegs at 65 mile an hour plus. The Honda doesn't vibe, and neither does the RE. The RE has those sort of extra thick pads, and that works really well. Something that perhaps BSA can look into, because that was a bit frustrating above 65 miles an hour. All have equally as good brakes. The Honda feels the most substantial, I think, size-wise for me, followed then by the BSA and then the Royal Enfield. The seat was equally as comfortable on all three, and the suspension feels pretty much the same, even though initially the bounce is a little bit different. Whilst you're riding, they all feel okay, to be honest. They're all pretty much of a muchness. They're all pretty much the same. All of them have right way up forks and that twin rear shocks, and that seems to work quite well as a setup for all three. The Honda does have the indicators in the horn the other way round to the other two, so that's also the other way around to a lot of bikes that I've ridden, to be fair, and that can catch you out. However, the BSA is the only one that has a rev counter and the other two don't. If you need a rev counter, then, you know, there you go, the BSA has one. If you're not bothered about a rev counter, then it doesn't really matter, I suppose. In terms of what you see on the dash, I think the BSA looks the best. When you look at the handlebars, it looks the best, then followed by the Royal Enfield and then the Honda, which is a little bit lacking, I think. However, overall, I think the Honda has a better side profile, then followed by the BSA and then the Royal Enfield. I think it's because it's got more of that classic look. The Honda has got a great look to it, the BSA another good look to it with a more flatter seat, and then the Royal Enfield has that dipped seat, and for me that doesn't quite work as well aesthetically. But again, as you know, looks are subjective, so different people will have different views on that. The build quality, pretty much the same across the whole board. The Honda does feel just that little touch better in its finish. The BSA and the Royal Enfield are pretty much on par with each other. Weight-wise, the Honda is the lightest at 178 kilos, then the Royal Enfield at 181 kilos, and then the BSA at 184. But you don't really notice it, to be fair. They all ride pretty much the same in terms of weight and manoeuvrability, and moving it around without the engine running, they all feel pretty much similar, to be honest. Value for money, I think the BSA is great value for money. If you want a commuter that will happily sit at 70, absolutely fine, great. If they can sort out that tiny bit of vibe on the foot pegs. The Royal Enfield is great value. Now they've lowered the price. I think obviously they've thought, maybe we should do something about this, and they've lowered the price to be pretty much the same as the BSA. If you're happy with a steady 60, possibly 65, maybe 70 on a downhill stretch. Perhaps also if you need a bike that's slightly smaller, then the Royal Enfield might be better. But out of those two, I think the BSA is a better value. The Honda is a great price for a Honda, let's be honest. Although the top end speed is a little lacking and on par with the Royal Enfield. So value for money, I mean, bearing in mind as well that the Honda is £500 more than the other two. So value for money, I think the BSA comes out on top. But again, you need to ride them all. I think if you're in the market for this style of bike and that capacity, take a ride on all three of them and see for yourself. So let me know what you think on that. And that's all I've got. So thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share. Click the notification bell for more uploads. And I'll be back very soon with the Vosges DS800X. So stay tuned for that. And also I've got another launch event coming up very soon with a new brand, Hero, and their Hunk 440. So I'm going to Alton Park to check that out, so stay tuned for that one also, and I'll see you of course in the future for lots more. So until then, please ride and drive carefully, but have fun. Bye bye.